Okay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a program that we're doing today with the Shia youth of Ahlul Bayt in Dearborn around the topic of stigma against mental health. So I'm just waiting for people for the group to come on Instagram as well. So we're doing it on Instagram as well as on YouTube and Facebook. So you're welcome to join us with the questions. I'm just waiting to get on the Instagram, inshallah. Here we are. Inshallah, we won't have any connection issues.
Assalamu alaikum.
Just making sure we've got the sounds here. Can you guys hear me? I can hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can, but not in my earphones. So just a moment.
Okay.
We don't want any echo issues.
Yeah.
So let's just see what's going on here. So just a heads up, we have a tornado warning here in Ottawa at the moment.
Okay.
So I hope the internet will be fine. Okay, just one moment. There we go. I think we can hear each other now. There we go.
Okay, can you hear us?
All good? Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We're all on board?
Yeah.
All right. So welcome again, everybody. So today, inshallah, we're taking a look at the topic of stigma against mental health with the lovely Sister Isra and Sister Tiba from Dearborn. And somebody mentioned no sound? No, you guys, can everybody hear us live on Facebook and Instagram, everywhere else? Wa alaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Khair, inshallah. So everybody who's joining us, I'm going to hand it over to the sisters. We just wanted to make sure technically everything's all up. So Sister Tiba and Sister Isra, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to this live. And we have our special guest, Sister Barak Hussein. And we're doing this topic about stigma against mental health because a lot of times you hear people talk about mental health, but not as much as it should, because it's actually a very, very important topic to talk about. And a lot of people don't take it serious. Either if it's like elder generation, younger generation, any generation, some of them don't take it as serious as it should be. Can you say something?
Yeah, there's a very clear stigma around mental health, especially with the Arab community, even in Dearborn. So what we're trying to do is spread awareness on that and also like have a couple questions on how we can control that and how we can influence better mental health for everyone.
Yeah, so inshallah, right, we're going to have a discussion about that. So anybody who has any sort of questions for Sister Barak to point, just send it in the comments anywhere, inshallah, we'll say it. So Sister Barak, we're so happy to have you on here. So Sister Barak is a Canadian Iraqi psychotherapist. She's also known as the Muslim counselor. She's a very passionate public speaker in Muslim mental health, social justice, Islamic issues, and poetry. She's worked locally and internationally on a variety of mental health initiatives, working tirelessly to break the stigma against mental health and any topic about that surrounding the community. She also speaks on a variety of Islamic and psychological issues, bridging the connection and misconceptions around Islam and mental health, which is really, really important that we really need to talk about that, especially how mental health is important in the Islamic community as well. So she talks about mental health within the Muslim communities, professional, psychological, and academic, as well as other faith and cultural audiences. So inshallah, we're going to start with the first question, Sister Barak, if you're ready, and we can sort of go off of that, inshallah. So the first question is, what are some ways to deal with someone who does not think opening up or seeing someone will help with their mental health due to their lack of understanding?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So it's really important when we take a look at mental health, it's to understand what it's all about. And inshallah, we'll be able to really delve deep into what does it mean to explore the stigma and what does it mean to really normalize what mental health is, right? So before we get into what are some ways dealing with someone who does not think opening up or seeing someone will help with their mental health due to their lack of understanding, let's first tackle the understanding of what mental health is all about. So when we look at the basic understanding of what mental health is, it's about the balance, right? Balance of our physical life, meaning physical activities, mentally, work. What else? What else would you say? And you guys are going to help me answer these questions too, by the way, right? We're going to make it interactive, and even from our audience, inshallah. When you hear that mental health, what comes to your mind when you first hear it?
For me, being content with your life as it is and still being able to strive towards a better life at the same time, but while like being content at the same time with what you have.
So that word content, can you describe that? What does that mean exactly?
Accepting what you have and your abilities and what what you're not able to do at the same time.
Okay, so that's an interesting concept. So being content and accepting, right? Somebody threw in the word here, depression. And that's the thing, when you hear the word mental health, a lot of people, Sister Sliba, move into the camera, they're asking you. Thank you. So what we're seeing here is the idea of acceptance, right? And acceptance with what you have and what you're able to do. And that's part of the definition of it, right? When we look at mental health in general, it's again about that overall balance of all the things that are in your life, right? So striking a balance of social, physical, spiritual, economical, and mental. Another definition that we hear often is being able to realize your full potential, which is closely related to what you were saying, Sliba, right? Realizing your full potential and coping with the normal stressors of life, where you can work productively, fruitfully, and you're able to contribute to your community, right? So again, it's about that balance. If that's missing, then it could potentially lead to disruptions in your life, right? That balance, if not taken care of, with the little disruptions here, there could potentially lead to mental illnesses, because we all have mental health, right? Just like physical health. But if one of these things are off balance and we're not taking care of it, then it could lead potentially to mental illnesses. And these are basic logical concepts that we can take a look at without it becoming scary, because a lot of people within our communities, as soon as you hear mental health, and especially the Iraqis and the Arabs, you know, you start hearing "Rahsarin majnoona," you're going to be crazy, you know, and especially for those of us who studied psychology, I definitely got that growing up and going to university, where people were saying, what are you studying? It's psychology. Oh, you know, the Iraqi. Oh, you know, and then they'll be like, well, رح تصيرين مجنونة مثل هذول اللي قاعد تعالجيهم. You're going to be just as crazy as those people that you're going to be treating. So it's interesting to see how right away people in our communities jump to that stigma and that misconception that mental health means that, but it's so much more than that. It's so much deeper than that. It is about striking all of that balance. And if we take it a step further, it has to do with our wellness, right? And the University of California, the Davis campus, has a really nice, you could say, outline in terms of what these dimensions are. And they have to do with occupational, emotional, environmental, financial, physical, social, and intellectual. And if we compare that, let's say, to the hadith by Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam, where he says, divide your time into 4 parts: an hour to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an hour to work or provide for your family, an hour to socialize with friends and those who are trustworthy and can keep your secrets, and lastly, an hour for yourselves and where you can perform what you desire without falling into haram. So you see right there, the modern psychological theories when it comes to the idea of wellness closely relates to what Imam Musa al-Kadhim taught us years and years ago. And you see, this is something that we can all adhere to, we can all connect to. And it's not something unusual. It's not something to be fearful of. Yet, again, within our communities, according to this question here, how do we get people to open up when they don't think, they don't have that understanding of what mental health is all about? So it's really important to work around that understanding and work around the concepts that are so basic, because 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people that we know, or even us, including over a lifetime, are going to be impacted by mental illness of some sort. these statistics are pretty high, 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. So we have to take that seriously. We have to understand what mental health is. الصحة mental العقلية, right? Or
Yeah.
النفسية when it's psychology. So it's very closely related to our faith. And the more we get into discussion, inshallah, the more we'll get into that. So to answer the first part, first we want to get into using language that we're familiar with, right?
Yeah.
For example, if you tell somebody, perhaps if you notice that they're not doing well and you tell them you're depressed, I don't think you're going to jump.
That affects them.
They could be offended. They may not take lightly to the words. They may be, it may not be easy for them to open up when they hear the words, you're depressed, rather than perhaps say things using the language that easily connect to, such as, you're fatigued, you don't look as interested in what you used to do before, you don't seem that engaged in the community, in your schoolwork, in work. So when you come about it this way, the person will probably more likely open up and connect, as opposed to hearing the word you're depressed or anxious and whatnot. So it's really important to connect at the core level of using terminology and linguistics that we understand and we connect with. It's not going to be scary. And then we get into the basic stuff. What we said here is to understand that mental health is about that overall balance. If you don't take care of that balance, then of course there's going to be something off. That's only normal. It's only natural. That's what makes you human.
Yeah, the word depressed is thrown around these days like it's nothing. It's like, oh, like I failed the test, I'm depressed. You get it? When depression is actually something very, really serious and
well, if I was living in the States and had the president that you guys have, I would be depressed as well.
Okay,
all right?
Same, but like
a little bit of morbid humor there, but sometimes, that's it. People just throw these words around very easily. And nowadays with the high suicidality rates, and I know this is something of concern in Dearborn as well, and we have this here in Canada as well, we can't just easily throw these words around. And if you notice, also using language such as when young people say, go kill yourself.
Yeah.
Last year,
a lot.
It is. It's part of the language that we use, right? Just the slang that we use. Last year, somebody actually said that to a 9-year-old refugee girl from Syria who's seen so much khatiyya. And then when she was here, she was dealing with a lot of trauma herself and was not doing well and was bullied at school. And somebody actually said those words to her. And the poor girl went and actually killed herself. So we don't realize that somebody who's being bullied or is not doing well, when you use such terminology, you can potentially cause that person to actually potentially go in that direction. So it's really important to be aware of the language that we use on yourself, but also onto others.
So that was actually, do you have any comments? Because I didn't know about that story, and wow, that's really sad.
It's hard to hear. It's hard.
And that happens a lot, but most stories aren't really heard, but people throw it out like it's nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I also have become aware, I think it was during Shahr Ramadan, that there was a young man who had killed his mother due to mental illnesses as well in Dearborn. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
close to her. Yeah.
Exactly. Somebody mentioned. Yeah, and so it was really hard to hear about that, and very sad for the families involved and the community that this took place. And I think it is because there's a lack of awareness to provide the appropriate supports and understanding, right? And somebody mentioned here that bullying is very common and widespread in the U.S. and that people don't realize the impact of the phrases and the words on others, but also people don't realize mental health in general, how challenging and devastating it can be when people don't take care of the illness, when the community has such a taboo around it, Before we get into the next questions, let's take a look at some of the taboos that we have within our communities in terms of perhaps mental illnesses are not real illnesses because you can't see it, like a broken arm or a broken leg, right? Yeah. That mental illnesses will never impact me because I'm religious. I have faith in God.
It's my favorite one.
Yeah, go read more Quran, go read more dua, go pray. And I absolutely believe in the power of reading Quran and du'as as part of the healing, as part of the treatment. But essentially, when you have somebody with a broken arm and leg, you're not going to go tell them
don't go to the doctor.
No,
Yeah,
well, you're not going to
say
tell
that.
them go
Yeah, you're
read
not gonna say
Quran
that.
when you have a broken arm or a broken
Yeah.
leg. You're going to tell them, let's go to the emergency, let's go to the hospital, let's go take care of this before we get into the actual healing parts. Rather, I just want to put it out there. If for some reason the electricity goes out, we're going to have to get back on. And we'll just use, hopefully there'll still be internet if the power outage is off, because I'm hearing the thunders and
right now.
you guys can hear it too?
Yeah, and you're kind of like,
Yeah, you kind of like coming in and out.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, that's not a good sign.
No, right now you're fine, but before.
Inshallah, yeah, because I can see the clouds there and I can hear the rolling thunder. Khair, inshallah.
Inshallah khair.
So some other misconceptions, people think about that bad parenting causes these illnesses, which is not true. There's a complexity of issues around what contributes to a child's good mental health balance, but definitely parents and family upbringing have a huge role to play in good mental health, right? People with mental illnesses are violent and dangerous. That's also a misconception. What's interesting, the research shows that people who have mental illnesses are more likely to be victims rather than the perpetrators. People who are isolated are the ones who are more likely to be violent. And so we know that people who experience mental illnesses tend to be isolated. That's the linkage there, right? Another misconception we have within our community is that people who experience mental illnesses are weak and they can't handle stress. Interestingly enough, people who have mental illnesses have become very good at recognizing when they become stressed, so they know ahead of time how to take care of it before the stress symptoms really overtakes them. That was a fascinating thing to be aware of. Another thing is people who experience mental illnesses can't work. That's not true with accommodations and supports. And there's, mashallah, a lot of mental health, healthy workplace initiatives. That's something that has been really taken care of well, I would say, in some places. I know the culture, it's challenging. It's not that easy to have that everywhere, but it's slowly changing, inshallah. Another one is kids can't have a mental illness like depression. Those are adult problems.
That's so much among like families as well. Like someone said in the comments, among families, because you're like 10 or 12 years old, you can't be your mental health should be fine. But that's a huge misconception, because I think, you shouldn't be old to face it.
Like if your life is good, you shouldn't be mentally ill, because people are dying in other places where it's like tragedy can happen, and you can focus on both. You can focus on people dying in other places and also focus on mental health without
And not only that, to what you're saying, Gleba, is that you're not validating the struggle that person is experiencing. And that's a huge part of when we talk about treatment of mental health, is it's really important to learn how to validate, acknowledge somebody who is being challenged, right? And another part of acknowledgement is this one: everyone gets depressed as they get older. It's just part of the aging process. Not quite, huh? No. It's not part of the aging process per se, but it can happen at any age. You can say that definitely the elderly perhaps could be more susceptible to it. The reason being is perhaps because of isolation. They're not feeling as useful as they once were before. Things like that. Definitely that can lead to depression, but not the aging process itself, right? So I just got another alert on my phone about the tornado. So Allah yasir, inshallah. So,
inshallah khair. Oh my
inshallah.
God.
No, a few weeks ago, we were caught in a tornado warning, and there was a wedding happening outside, and people in the community, and the gushes of rain that came. What a memorable day for the Arusa and the Aris. It was a COVID pandemic wedding as well. So what the family did is that people would they were supposed to have a huge 400 people wedding, got canceled. You can imagine how that would have impacted them. But subhanAllah, they went with the flow. The father is very easygoing and accepting of the situation. What they did instead is they had decorations in the home where families would come, family at a time, would take pictures with the bride and groom, and then they would wait outside so they could do a traditional zaffa. And then they had tents in the parking lot. But what happened was that the rain just gushed at the same time as the bridal party was leaving the house. You say that rain is a blessing on a wedding day. I was saying a tornado, though. A friend of mine said the angels are really, really happy for them with this year. That's what you call reframing. So I hope we'll see how it goes today.
Inshallah, may
Inshallah.
Allah protect you, honestly, and there's inshallah khair.
Jami'an, inshallah. And one of my favorites here, and this is specifically to the Muslim community, that jinn possession. You know, lack of faith leads to poor mental health with the jinn and ayn and all that kind of
The
stuff.
ayn especially.
Yeah, that's always a fascinating one. But we can't completely neglect and invalidate that, because there is ayahs from the Quran that talk about that. There's a hadith also that talk about that and how to protect yourself from that. But just because somebody is experiencing that, we cannot automatically say it's because of that. And even the scholars and the sheikhs that I work with, when they do their part in trying to help and heal somebody.
You're cutting off like.
Oh, really? It's all good at my end, but just to continue the thought there, what we were saying is that even the sheikhs and the scholars, once they've done their part and part of the healing and the treatment, if that's not working, then they will tell people, go and get your treatment, please. Go to the doctor, go to the hospital, go to a psychiatrist, go to a psychologist, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important to recognize as part of the language and the lingo. Yeah, let's move on now before the tornado hits.
The second question is, how can you make someone feeling helpless to be motivated to seek mental health?
So again, in terms of the motivation, what is the first step? Sorry, what question are we doing?
What is number 2? What is the first step one should do to become more mentally healthy?
More mentally healthy. So again, it's really important to learn. Can you hear me?
Okay, now we can, yeah.
Okay, so it's really important here to recognize that when this happens, to be mentally healthy is again about maintaining that balance we were looking at earlier, right? Learning how to balance all aspects of your life. So work, family life, when it comes to spirituality, like I said, work and education and et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important to be able to have that in balance. If one of these things become off, then it's important to revisit that and look at how to take care of your health in a better way, right? So what does that mean exactly? What is the first step when I have clients come and see me and they're saying, I'm not feeling well, I'm really sad, I'm really low, I'm really fatigued, I'm this and this and that. And usually what I tend to do right away is start asking questions in terms of, what is your eating like? What is your sleeping like? What is your activity level like? So we'll look at all of these aspects. The reason being is if you're eating and you're sleeping and your exercise is off and there's a lot of toxicity in your life, chances are that's going to deeply impact your sense of feeling healthy. Rather, you're going to feel unhealthy. Just like physically, you wouldn't feel very healthy if you're not eating the right things, if you're not sleeping, if et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important to be able to balance those things. So then we take a look at, all right, let's look at your diet. What are you eating? You're drinking Bibsi and you're eating pizza and you're eating the junk food and you're not drinking water and caffeine, et cetera, all of this kind of stuff. Well, of course, that's going to throw you off. If you consider drinking coffee as a vegetable or fruit rather, because coffee comes from coffee beans, which is a fruit.
Really
or chocolate rather, right? Yeah, it's that's not really going to do much for you. So we take a look at managing eating, sleeping, and exercise, going into details with that. So setting up an eating plan. Then we take a look at how to manage exercise. So exercise is very underrated, I would say, within our communities. And alhamdulillah, in the last 2 years, people have started caring about fitness a little bit more. The idea here with that is that exercise gets rid of your stress hormones that are built up in your body. There's nowhere for them to go. Of course, it's going to be built up and come out in the form of either depression or in the form of anxiety, right? So it's really important to recognize how you respond to stress so you know how to reverse the effect of stress. Sleep. Sleep is very challenging these days since the pandemic. It's just been throwing people off guard. And with Shahr Ramadan and now the blessed days of Muharram coming up, although it's going to be very different this year. Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see. I know a lot of centers have set up drive-throughs, which I know is happening in Michigan. I would love to be there because it's not happening in my city. I tend to leave Ottawa during Muharram. I can't cross the border. I can't cross the border. The borders are closed between Canada and the U.S.
Once they open, we're inviting you here.
Okay.
Inshallah,
inviting you.
Inshallah, be my honor. I've truly missed, and I know a lot of people have just missed flying miss traveling, miss going and into different cities. I know myself and a lot of other speakers have had to cancel events and programs over the last few months, and the whole mess of dealing with the stress
especially for
of that hasn't been
Muharram,
fun.
especially for Muharram and Shahr Ramadan, it was really, really different.
Because
Muharram's going to be really
subhanAllah,
different.
you know, it's going to be different for Muharram. I think Shahr Ramadan, we were fasting. So I think staying home really helped us with our energy levels. And being able, right in the midst of the pandemic, I think we needed to stay home and really revisit our spirituality and rethink things about life, which helped us a lot. I think it helped. But I think Muharram is very different. This is when our centers are completely packed and full. Whether you follow the religion and spirituality or not, it's part of our identity when it comes to the story of Imam Hussein, the journey of Imam Hussein and the inspiration of Imam Hussein. We connect to it on such a deep level, no matter how much into religion or spirituality you are. And this is why I feel that it is going to impact people. But mashallah, so many centers are doing so many different innovative ways of making sure the majalis continue, whether it's on live programming, whether it's physical distancing inside of the centers or a drive-through. I love that idea.
And
just
doing a nice idea.
As long as
like
people just stay like careful, you know, like I like the idea that they're doing live because everybody is
being safe.
They're still being safe, and you know the love of Hussein is in your heart, and like it's in your heart, and of course it's going to be different because we're not sitting in majalis, but it's good to be safe as well.
It's vital that we become safe. I mean, we don't know you know, I'm not into conspiracy theories or anything like that, conspiracy theories rather, but it is important that we do take safety as very important. We are seeing how contagious this is. We are seeing also how people recover, but we've also seen how people have died in relation to it. So we have to be careful, absolutely. And also as Muslims, practicing what the law says and not going against it in the countries that we're living in. It's really important that we follow the rules and regulations right now, but at the same time, also still keep up these majalis, which I think have a lot to do with our mental health and being healthy, because a lot of people have gone into depression. A lot of people have been very anxious during this time as well. So these are things that we need to address during this time of the lockdown and how it's slowly been opening up. Alhamdulillah, in Ramadan, Shahr Ramadan, we were not even able to go to our centers. Everything was live. But now, alhamdulillah, our centers are opening up slowly and carefully in different ways. And I truly hope that this is not going to cause more anxiety and stress for people in terms of the spread, but also it'll be interesting to see moving forward how these majalis are going to be. And for those people who cannot make it, please do take advantage of the programs that are available online everywhere, mashallah. A lot of centers have these programs.
There's a lot.
So it's really important to see what programs are there and how we take advantage of like you said, the love of Imam Hussein is in our hearts, but how are you going to express it? How are you going to share that? What are you going to do with that to really connect with the message of Imam Hussein and what his revolution stood for today, and not just for Muslims, but spreading that message? I know a lot of the Hussein groups, right? Like we work a lot with that in terms of giving out hot chocolate or giving out water bottles, giving out roses. We're going to have to rethink how we're going to spread the message in innovative ways here in North America and in the Western world, right? It's challenging. And those challenges, I think, are also making us view things differently, reflecting differently about our spirituality, about what it means to be who we are, whether we're talking about Muharram, but just in general, right? So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also really sad that we're not going to be able to have the same majalis as before. There's such a beautiful atmosphere.
Even Arba'een, like that's just really sad. But
let's not even go there. Let's not
cry. You don't want to cry right now.
As a Karbala'iya, that's devastating. I think I'm in denial because in July, I usually have that cheap ticket that comes out for like $780 booked. That, you know, I usually have that booked in July, and I've got family in Iraq. I'm all set for it.
Next year, inshallah. Next year,
inshallah. Yeah, this year I'm in denial.
Yeah.
Inshallah, you guys get to go, and if you guys go and you need khaddam, there's lots of khaddam there, including my family.
I just want to try it just once. I just want to try it once. I've never.
Go with a group. Go with a group that knows what they're doing when you go on your first Arba'een ziyarah, because although sometimes it can be big, there's just something beautiful about the spirituality of a group where they've done this before they know the ins and the outs.
Yeah.
They know also how to make it a comfortable, even though it's a very tiring experience, but a beautiful one. But there's just something when you have people who, especially as your first time, people who know all the places and the history and can guide you. And then after that, you can go on your own or with other people together.
Yeah, inshallah, I really want to experience it, Yara.
Inshallah. So there's a question here that somebody just
Yeah.
posted. It says,
Somebody
any
said-
advice for how to balance your mental health, depression, and university? That's a really good question.
University.
And
That is
as
really
a
important.
therapist working at a university medical clinic, this is something I see at least 5 or 6 times a day with my clients all week, all year, wherever we work.
Yeah.
And it's challenging being a university student with all the demands that you have from home, perhaps from work, from your classes, and especially depending on what you are studying. So it's really important to recognize, again, how you get stressed, what stresses you out, learning those signs so that when the signs come, for example, that you start overeating or undereating, or you get cranky, or you notice you get really irritable, or you get really quiet and withdrawal. Like, you have to learn what your symptoms are so that you know how to reverse the impact of them. So, for example, I always tell students, don't take on more than 4 classes per term. Usually people go up to 5 or 6, which is quite a lot. It's intense. But if you can divide up, like, you don't have to finish the degree at a certain time because mama and baba said you have to finish at this time. Right? Get your
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure to be like 21 and graduated.
Yeah.
It is, but that's just a number. It doesn't really mean anything. What if you finish, you're taking 5, 6 courses a term, you're failing, you're not doing well,
You're stressing
That's
yourself
very
out.
important.
Yeah.
you end up with a low marks at the end, and it's a what's the word that I'm looking for? It's
Repetitive cycle.
It's an aggressive cycle, I feel like.
yeah, like I forget the word before cycle. Just slipped my mind. But anyways, it's just that cycle that is never ending. It's not coming. Help me out, ladies. What's the word?
Is it repetitive?
Repetitive, never ending, abusive cycle. I can't. I don't remember it.
I think you're talking about repetitive. Like, it's a continuous.
Oh, it's right there.
Downward spiral.
Something like that. Yeah. It's when the word.
Yeah, use your psych. She knows psych. She can use the psych word.
I'm studying psychology.
It's all good, but it's a cycle that is hurtful, right? So basically, what you want to do is that
Ruminating.
No, it's a vicious cycle.
Oh.
Okay. That makes sense.
I thought you were like continuous.
Yeah, vicious cycle, right?
Okay.
That what happens here is you don't do well academically. It impacts your mood. Then you feel depressed and unworthy and not good enough, and then that impacts you to do worse on your next time. So it's a vicious cycle. So by the time you graduate, you haven't done well. You don't feel good. You don't feel that you've accomplished anything. Why? Just because you need to take 5, 6 classes to finish early? Yes. What's the point?
A lot of expectations, honestly.
A lot of expectations, a lot of pressure.
Ethnic parents, want us to be engineers or doctors, nothing in between.
Yeah.
So it's really important.
There's no other major. Like,
SubhanAllah.
Nothing exists, right? But that's wherein we really have to have open talks with our parents to talk about our parents, inshallah, if they're very aware, to notice what your preferences are, to notice what your strengths are, to notice joy, your passions, and follow that. I was actually heading into medicine before because the expectations dictora, because my dad had a PhD in physics. Dictora, I have to be the first doctor in the family out of all my cousins in Iraq too, by the way. And what happened with that is obviously not there. I didn't end up going into psychiatry. I ended up doing psychotherapy, which alhamdulillah was the right path for me, because I don't think I would have been successful getting into medical school because I don't have the brains for physics and science.
They don't understand that.
I appreciate it, and I find it incredibly beautiful, and mashallah for those people who do have that ability. Thank you, Zainab Mahdi. She was telling us vicious cycle, and I kept I didn't look at.
Thank you, Zainab.
So I recall one day having this epiphany when I went and I was working as a job search assistant at the career services at that time at my university, and on behalf of the university or our group rather, I went to this workshop on a master's in counseling. So what I did is I was supposed to get information for my students. I ended up looking at that program and saying, that's what I want to do. I'm not going to apply for med school. And I recall that afternoon contacting my mom saying, I'm not applying to med school. I'm applying to this master's program.
See, you did it. See, that's
I did. I haven't looked back.
I love that.
You know, when something doesn't feel right, your gut is telling you, la, no.
Yes, always follow your gut feeling.
Follow it, but also be educated about it.
Educated, yeah, of course.
Be logical, research, ask those who know, do networking. Alhamdulillah, I did that. I did a lot of research ahead of time, spoke with people who got into med school, how to get into it. I remember this med school student from my high school who graduated came back to our high school. And it's really great to have these connections with people, because I told him, you know, I don't think I'm good at the sciences and I really want to study this and that. And he said, are you stupid? Like, sorry, Annie, but those are the words he actually used. Are you stupid? Study psychology, study arts, take the prerequisite courses that the university the one that you want to apply to wants for med school, and then you apply, because then you have high marks and then you can apply with the prereqs. Like, oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. I did do that, but even with that, I found it was very heavy on my mental health. Balancing in university when you are studying something that is not of your strength and your ability, it doesn't mean that you're not good enough or you don't have the brains or that you're stupid. La, it just means this is not what you're good at.
You have a different passion than what people tell you to be. Yeah.
Exactly. I respect the sciences, but I just didn't have the brains for it. And I redirected it to what I am good at. Which
Alhamdulillah, look at you. You're doing amazing.
Alhamdulillah. That's from Allah, because he helped guide me along the way, what felt right. So this is what I tell a lot of young people who are struggling with university in terms of what direction to go, in terms of their studies. Find what you're good at. Find what you're passionate at. I knew I was passionate about psychology. Those were my best marks. I knew I was passionate about English in terms of language and public speaking. And I used to be in public speaking competitions. The only thing my dad, my Baba, Abuya let me do. No sports, no this, no that. Public speaking competitions was the only extracurricular activity
you can do.
Was able to do. So it's really important to find what you're good at and see how you can make it a career. When you're in university and you find that balance, okay, in terms of finding the passion that you are enjoying and that you're good at, right, for your goals, important to balance it out. Okay, so instead of 5-6 classes, take 4 classes and be part of a university group, perhaps an Islamic university group, a spiritual, art, something that's going to grow you and help you grow and develop further your skills and abilities. Why not if it's like a women's soccer club that's indoors and no men are going to be there? You know, things like that. Our religion does not limit us. It gives us guidelines and boundaries, of course, but that's for our spiritual growth if you look at it that way. And especially the hijab as women in university and whatnot. You can do anything you put your mind to it within these guidelines that we have. Balance also means eating well, sleeping well, which I know is almost impossible during exam nights and assignments, but really finding a balance with that, asking for support and help, talking to your professors, academic TAs, getting support. It's really important to use the services on campus. If you have health and counseling services like we do at my university, use them at your university. I encourage people from my own community here, please come use the services. You don't want to talk to me, Adi, go talk to somebody else. Or if you want to talk to me, ahlan wa sahlan, it's all confidential. So I encourage people to use those services, right? It's so important. That will help you put things into perspective, into balance. Now, there was another question here, advice, and I'll get to the questions, the other ones that have been on Instagram. Any advice for moving to uni away from home? So I'll put it out there. I come from a traditional Iraqi household, which means you stay in your city and you stay in your parents' house till you get married. So this nonsense of apparently us moving out to study, this just didn't work in my household. But I know other families who experience this, and other families who have had their children perhaps apply to different universities because of their specialties, because of scholarships. So it is, and I, as the international student counselor at my university, I deal a lot with people coming in from different countries and provinces as well. It is challenging. It is absolutely challenging to pick up and go, and all of a sudden you don't know anybody. It's not the same environment. Your family who's used to cooking your food, buying your groceries, washing your clothes. I have students who all of a sudden say, I thought rice and pizza was food. Really? then we have to go through this whole process of looking at what is healthy food and what's how to prepare it and how to so it's really important to understand these things, learn how to be independent. I think moving away from home for university is a wonderful opportunity to learn independence, for young men to really learn how to develop skills perhaps that they're used to the women in our cultures that do for them, right?
Yeah.
And even for young women to learn how to be independent because they're used to their baba and mama taking care of their money and other things perhaps. You know, I know these sound stereotypical, but at the same time, we know they're true.
They are, yeah.
We
They
have
are.
in our community.
Yeah.
It's really important to have that independence, but also still maintaining, of course, our ties with our families, asking when you don't know, using the university orientation that they have, the supports, services, talking to, be best friends with your profs. I was one of those. Yes. Be close to your professors, develop friendships with them, learn from them, go to their TA, you know, their hour, we call them TA hours, things like that. Really develop, and because, and I'll get to the question where somebody says, I'm lonely and don't have friends. What do I do? I'll answer that with this. For people who are moving away to a completely different environment from their original, it's vital that you do develop healthy social networks around you, because that will impact your mental health, especially if you're a social butterfly, especially if you're used to a big family, especially if you have friends and family that you connected with back home. And I see this a lot, Khataya, with the international students that come who are used to life in Dubai or in Qatar or
and then they come here and it's
countries, and they come here and the sakhamo, as we say, right? It's just completely different, and the social interactions are very different. Perhaps not so much in Dearborn, because it's very much like Shara Baghdad, you know, like it's
like you're like in the Middle East in Dearborn.
I see women in abayas in Dearborn and men in Shadish. I was like, hi Shino, hi.
Yeah. You're literally in the Middle East when you come to Dearborn.
I loved it. I really enjoyed seeing that. And you know, if you're somebody coming from a Middle Eastern country who comes to Dearborn for university, you're fine. I'm not worried about you. Perhaps you just want to worry about the gossip and that type of issues that is very prominent within our communities. You probably want to be aware of that kind of stuff in a way and stay away from toxic social people, because sometimes being too social and giving too much of yourself to people, not setting boundaries just to please people and connect with them, that's toxic as well. You need to set boundaries with that. So connecting, if you're lonely, it's really important. And I'm really sorry to hear, sister, that you were experiencing that. And to the sister who mentioned it here, I highly recommend that you reach out to the social groups around you in your community, whether it's online. And I ask you to reach out to me after, if you'd like, and even to the young ladies here, to connect with them to see how we can help you with that and how to connect. If it is something serious in terms of depression, please do reach out to a therapist. I myself, I don't do private practice. I honestly don't have time. I work full time and have a family, and I do these programs, so I cannot take on private practice. However, if you do reach out to me, I will connect you with those who are doing private practice, and they are from our community, and they are trustworthy, and they are very highly skilled people, alhamdulillah, that I refer people to often, whether you are looking for a marriage specialist or somebody who speaks Arabic or somebody who's in the UK or somebody who's in Australia. And alhamdulillah, we're developing a really wonderful network of Muslim Shia psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, psychotherapists, because we're not just counselors and that's it. There's specialists in each area. We study different things to earn the title that we have for the skills sets that we do have. So sister, reaching out to you and answering your question, please do connect with your local community. Reach out to online groups and programs that people are doing. I know within each community there are all these wonderful Zoom programs that people are doing within, private ones. So please reach out within your community and do that. And if it is something more severe, to please do get the mental health support to help you work through it, inshallah.
Inshallah. Allah ya'tikum al-afiyah.
Allah ya'afikum. So I know we have a whole list of questions that were prepped, but mashallah, the people are asking a lot. So I'm going to read the next one here that says, how do we maintain our spirituality at university, which has a mixed environment, and we try our best to refrain from all types of vices? That's a wonderful question. And what I'm understanding here, mixed environment, is what they mean by that is
Like
just yeah, in terms of and I'm just catching up on the other questions as well here, male and female environments. And I think coming from the communities that we are from, especially Arakas, I think we've learned how to segregate quite a bit, and it becomes hard to talk to. I grew up in that community too, and I grew up with a Lebanese community, which mashallah, they integrate by keeping still the social the Islamic social boundaries as much as possible. And actually, there's a program right now that Brother Hussein Mekki is doing on that, how to maintain that. So after we're done this, you can go check out his, or if you want to check it out, Adi, ما رح نزعل. But he's talking about how to maintain those relations. But I find it's important that we do need to interact with each other, respecting our boundaries, because then you grow up like most Iraqis, not knowing how to talk to the opposite gender. And when you get to university, you're like, oh, you're the Muhammad from Beit Abu Muhammad. Because you never seen them. You go to the Husseinias and you're completely isolated, don't know anybody. I think there needs to be a healthy balance, given we're living in the West. It's not practical to not completely know how to talk to the opposite gender, given that we're going to be working, going to school. I know there are schools, mashallah, Muslim schools, that have the separation and the segregation, which has its benefits, just like in other private schools. But we also have to be realistic that we have to learn how to connect and talk to each other, because it can impact your mental health as well. Right? I think it truly can impact your mental health if, in terms of self-esteem, awareness, and also later on in life when we start connecting with people for marriage.
Yeah.
We should be able to know how to talk to the opposite.
They're not going to know how to interact.
Yeah.
But we also have to, let's be real here, and address the issues in our community as well. Social media has made it very, very easy to connect with the opposite gender, and completely blurring the lines.
Of halal,
right?
Yeah.
Halal, haram, and modesty. And sometimes I have people who give me a hard time and say, what's up with your salamu alaikum and formality? I'm like, sorry, do I know you? Ben ammi, ben khali, min anta tahju ya hichi, you know, like who are you for me to get informal with you? You know, sometimes we have to keep these boundaries. And ladies, know your worth. Know your worth, my young sisters. Know your value and your worth does not come from a heart or a kiss sent to you on social media or the likes that you get. Your value and worth is from him.
I love her. I love her. Wow, thank you. Yes, everybody listening, she's 100% correct.
But I understand
validation on social media is a big problem.
Yeah,
it truly doesn't impact you, and we have to be realistic about this in terms of how it happens. And I was a teenager once. Sometimes I still feel like that, you know, but in a different world of social media and digital life. We didn't have the most we had back then. God, I sound so old when I say that, but back then we had MSN Messenger and Yahoo Messenger and email. That's as far as we got in high school before we hit university, and then it started to head up there. So that's really fascinating and interesting how we've developed to now even kids as young as a year old can do this.
Yeah.
Swipe, know how to it's great in one aspect, but it's also scary on another aspect, how it can impact your mental health that way. Right?
I think it's important to have a balance, to be honest. Not just
it is. And my sisters, like I said, it's really important for you not to put your value on these types of messages that you get from boys in your inbox. Hi, salam, sister. Your hijab looks really good, you know, and all this kind of nonsense and all that. We know what it is, and we know where it could lead, and we know the problems that happen in our communities. And you know, I don't know what age group is following right now, so I don't want to get too graphic, but we know it happens, and we know there are issues that happen before marriage that can lead to other issues and problems. We know that it's happened in our community. So we need to be aware of our self-esteem, our confidence, and our worth as young women, that these boys that are talking to you, if they're really serious, then, you know, they go talk to your brother and your dad for marriage. Make it official, make it that way, that we have nothing to fear, and you've got, you're getting to know them in a halal way. And I know a lot of people sometimes get into these halal or inappropriate relationships because perhaps it has something to do with their self-esteem, right? Perhaps they are not feeling very loved from their families, so they find it elsewhere. Perhaps they're very depressed and low, and then hearing certain things from people will lift them up. And body image issues that a lot of young women also experience, right? That's also something really important that we need to address, especially when it comes to fashion hijab and the nonsense that's out there that we see on social media with all these influencers and bloggers and vloggers and hijabi influencers. And sorry, I don't have tolerance for that whatsoever. I think it's destroying the self-esteem of our young women, our beautiful, modest hijabi young women. It's destroying them. They're completely blurring the lines of modesty and what fashion. I think you can be quite fashionable. And I'll say it, I think I'm very fashionable, but I, inshallah, try to follow modesty because I'm into fashion. I enjoy fashion. I enjoy beautiful clothes. This was a passion of mine since I was very young. I was involved in the modest fashion industry before it became the total clown show that we have today. It was only for women by women, and it was private. All of a sudden it became now runways on New York fashion and all this and that, and shaking your booty on the catwalk with some kind of turban hijab. It completely defeats the purpose of modesty.
Yeah, and modesty.
As women, we love to dress up. A lot of women, not everybody. We love that. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that, but it depends where you're going to show that, how you're going to show that, where are you doing that? Right. So I think a lot of young women are messing the point on that. And it impacts your self-esteem. It impacts the way you look at yourself and your body. You compare yourself to other people. And I think there's a lot of stigma around that too within our communities in terms of, let's say you do see a woman who's dressed a certain way, very tight clothing, revealing, a lot of makeup, hijab is questionable. I think it's really hard and a fine balance to find judgment, like between judgment and nahi anil munkar. And I've spoken about this topic before with Sister Sahar Jabir, who is studying Islamic studies, and she's also written a book about hijab, and she's explored this topic in depth. This is not about judgment. It can fall into judgment, but let's be real. Let's call it out for what it is. There is all forms of personal expression when it comes to the way you dress. Absolutely. But then, like I said, it's gone to the level of mockery now, where it's hugely impacting our young women and our young men as well. You hear comments from men about how women dress these days when hijab. Sure, men don't have a right to say what they do sometimes. It's not their right to say anything about how we dress. This is in our hands. This is our narrative. However, when it comes to modesty, and as women and hijabi women, we're out there and trying to do our thing, but you're out there with a piece of cloth over your head. How are you managing that? I know we're completely off topic now, so we'll get back on topic, but it's all interrelated to spirituality, related to our mental health. And these are issues as youth that I know we're all experiencing, and it's important that we connect with that. All right. So another question here is in terms of the mix, respect your boundaries. You're allowed to talk to the opposite gender, but within respectful boundaries, of course, and understanding all of everything that we've spoken about so far, and recognizing also that it is about that self-respect. It is about that honoring yourself, and also choosing who you want to talk to and who to mix with, because some people can be very toxic and hurtful and abusive, right?
Yes.
So we don't need that. All right, so let's continue on with some of the questions here.
Do you want the third question?
I'm just looking at, before we get to our next question. Somebody here, Zahra Al-Attar, that's amazing for that sister who was talking about being lonely, said she's part of an all-girls youth group. So if you want to join, please DM her. That's amazing. I love the support here. I love how people are sharing. Let's do all. Somebody's asking a very important question: how to deal with suicidal thoughts. I hate when people accuse you for being a bad Muslim. I'm not going to fully answer that right now. What I'm going to say is please go to the Muslim counselor, where I have a series of videos, including, or just Google on YouTube rather, topics, the Muslim counselor Barak Hussein and suicide. I've done a few videos on that. That's a whole session. So we're not going to adhere to it right now. But if you are experiencing that, please do reach out to the appropriate people in your communities, whether it's mental health specialists as well. You are not being a bad Muslim. I think you need to hear that you are not being a bad Muslim if you're having suicidal thoughts. I think the environment around you is bad. You are dealing with a lot. For you to get to that point, you are not being a bad Muslim. You're an incredible human being that is struggling. And it's really important that you please reach out to the appropriate resources. Because I know that that's something that a lot of people could say, that it's haram for you to have these thoughts. It's haram for people who have committed suicide, right? And there's a lot of misconceptions. And I see your expressions have changed, ladies.
Yeah, it's a really sensitive topic, and
bad mental health, it doesn't
yeah.
make you a bad Muslim.
Yeah.
You're not struggling because you're bad. You're struggling because it's a test from Allah.
It's a test from Allah, perhaps. It's a beautiful way of looking at it. You are struggling with life issues that a lot of people deal with, but don't talk about. Because
and they just leave it in, and then
and then it comes out in such a negative way. So it's really important that you do reach out, and inshallah we'll get you the right support. And if you want to message me afterwards, inshallah we'll connect you or to the sisters. Although the sisters are not mental health professionals, at least know the supports in your community to connect people with.
Yeah.
So let's continue on. My male friend is lonely too. What to do with him? Please connect him with male Muslim groups and youth groups. Exactly what we were saying here. There are a lot of resources for men. I know in Dearborn there's brother Hussein Sharara, bless him. He's very active. I've worked with him before. Haj Hassanin Rajab Ali, bless them.
Hassanin's really good, yeah.
Reach out to their amazing groups that they have. I know the Camp Taha wasn't there this year, and I know that's helped a lot of young people. But use the resources that are available. Reach out to your local resources as well. All right. Join a Zumba class. Those are great. Resources for men if they are lonely. And I think this is one of the questions that we have here, sisters, isn't it? In terms of, let's see what question here.
It was the fifth one. What are steps you recommend? What are steps
talking about their mental health?
Yeah, what are steps you recommend to normalize men talking about their mental health? Because it's not seen a lot. It's mostly,
It's not seen and it's not spoken about. It's not. I'm just trying to get a page here. Oh dear, I forget the name of the brother. He's a photographer in England, mashallah, who, when we talk about normalizing men's mental health, he went out and did some photography on men while they're crying and showing emotion to normalize that. Just give me a second. It's like that vicious cycle. It's the tip of my tongue. It's going to come out. And here it is. So if you go to, here's the Instagram page. If you go to ha.me, so brother Hussam al-Din, if you look at some of his photography, especially the pictures that he has around men and crying, he did this series of photographs called Men Do Cry. And I remember a few years ago, I was in the Muslim Vibe studio when the brother came in and he was talking, the same photographer was talking about this. And of course, I'm sitting there like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Within our own communities, we have men capturing men showing emotion. And I think this is part of normalizing that mental health is also very serious for men, right? And how we can do that. Let's link this now to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and especially with the days of Muharram that are coming up. Is it not encouraged within our culture to show emotion and cry for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam and the Ahlul Bayt and the tragedies they went through? Is it not encouraged to show that emotion, to cry? So I think it's already there within our Shia culture, you could say, Islamic Shia culture, but it's not so much integrated within the overall culture. We're not looking at it that way. When we do look at it that way, then I think we'll really be able to normalize it. If Imam Sajjad showed emotion for what happened in Karbala and he's a ma'soom, who are we not to show emotion then when we are dealing with distress? Did he not spend his entire life in distress showing emotion for what happened to his father and his family? So I think this is as a start from a spiritual religious perspective. If we use that narrative, that's really going to help us with that. Now we have less than a minute and a half left. I'm just going to jump through here. Let's see, make sure we don't, for those people who sent in their questions and I did not answer, we'll go back on again in Instagram. And if you can just send those questions in again, because I missed a lot of it. They're talking about male friends who are struggling. Okay, so we're going to cut out in less than a minute on Instagram. We'll continue here and then we'll go back in again because we just answered two.
Alhamdulillah, we're on 3 and we had like,
But that's the beauty of having
Yes.
a live discussion, alhamdulillah, with yourselves and with our audience who are also sending in lots of questions. So there's a question here on Facebook that was sent in, and I'll answer that once we get into that. But just to finish off in terms of that, so I highly recommend you check out the page at ha.me for Brother Hussam, and check out his beautiful pictures showing men and their emotions. I think it's a very powerful, there we go. It's a very powerful image when you see that. And it's something we can closely relate to, especially coming towards the days of Ashura and Muharram and leading into Arba'iniyya. So we're going to get kicked out of Instagram and we'll get back on. And ladies, why don't you chat a little bit, give us some feedback on this while we get back into Instagram.
Okay.
So you can turn on the sound so we can just chat with each other until it gets this all up and going. So what are your thoughts around this discussion that we just had?
Regarding women's mental health?
Regarding the whole thing, I really like, it's really important to talk about all these, like every point like we're making is like really important because they're not really talked about as much.
No, they're really not.
They're just like degrading people who have like mental health issues and stuff like that.
I never really thought about how Shia Islam plays into mental health. Even though I study mental health, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best ways that we can actually do that and normalize it to the men in our community, right? When we do it that way, alhamdulillah, it truly helps. Like, it truly helps put things into perspective and to normalize it, right? So, sorry, I'm just posting this while I can get on. Inshallah, we'll get back on in a second.
Yeah, because a lot of people who see like men crying, they're like, "Oh, you're a man, you shouldn't be crying," you know, and that's like a
It's like
huge
men have
thing.
to be tougher than women.
Yeah, but they're still human.
Less tough just because you cry.
Yeah, so it's like that thing,
It's
like,
like gender roles, I
yeah.
think. Yeah.
They're general.
And also the way we raise our young men and women, right? That's really important. If you're going to be raising the next generation of Abbasis and Hussein, they have better be able to express emotion safely and not be ridiculed for that.
Yeah.
Did Al-Abbas not show emotion when he couldn't bring water back to his family in Sukaina? That's the epitome of manliness that we have within our Shia culture. Imam Al-Abbas, rather, alayhi salam, and then we don't take that into consideration, that he showed a lot of emotion, that he couldn't do what he set out to do, but what a hero, right? And then the young men idolize him. And so this is a figure that showed strength but gentleness at the same time. And so our mothers, our sisters, both our men and women, we're responsible for raising the next generation of young men and women who are going to be husbands to your daughters, right?
Yes.
Who are going to be fathers for your grandchildren. You are responsible for that. So I'm just going to go back on live right now. So if you ladies want to join me.
Okay.
So we're back on Instagram. Assalamu alaikum. So this is part 2 for stigma against mental health, where mashallah we have gotten into many other discussions around that is very related to leading up to Muharram, I would say. So I'm just going to wait for you guys to do that, and don't forget to turn off the sound. Alaikum assalam.
Yeah.
All right. Salam, ladies. Welcome back.
We can hear each other.
Sister Tiba and Sister Isra from the Shia youth. The Shia
youth of Ahl al-Bayt.
Shia youth of Ahl al-Bayt from Dearborn. Ahlan wa sahlan. So this is part 2 of our first part for Instagram. For Facebook and YouTube, we've continued on. Alhamdulillah, we've got into quite a bit of a discussion with people's messages. So whoever has already sent questions that we didn't look at in Instagram, please do send it. I'm going to take a question here now from Facebook. So it says here, Salam, how do we deal with an emotional trauma when your most trusted person has betrayed you? Please guide. That's a whole other program on its own.
Yeah.
It's an excellent question and a very difficult one, I would say, to answer, because there's so many different layers to such a question. the short answer to that, I would say, especially if you're a spiritual religious person, is to work through acceptance, to understand that not everybody is going to be as loving and caring and perhaps as honest as you are, right? Salam aluya tuqa from UK. So how do you deal with an emotional trauma when your most trusted person has betrayed you? Turn yourself back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and know that He has possibly and probably pushed away the people that don't deserve to be in your life. That's how I would spiritually reframe that. I'm using this language because we're doing it from an Islamic perspective here, working with the Shia youth of Ahlul Bayt. I would use this type of language to work with that. So when you were faced with an emotional trauma from people that you've trusted, you can allow yourself to be devastated, or you can allow yourself to reframe this as an opportunity to have gotten rid of trash people that you don't need in your life anymore. Right? عسى أن تحبون شيئا وهو شر لكم.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Clearly, you may love something and it's bad for you. You may have really cared about this person, or you really wanted to be with them if it was a partner, and then a friend who's betrayed you. It's a stab in the heart. Of course it is. You can't deny that. However, what you want to do is reframe that, right? Reframe that as an opportunity that God gave you to get rid of toxic people that you truly don't need in your life. Right? And of course, when you work with a therapist around such a topic, the whole process of the therapeutic process can really help you work through that sadness, that trauma of it, right? Somebody could have cheated on you. Somebody could have lied to you. What else? They could have betrayed you with money, manipulation, right? Abuse, taking advantage of your kindness and your goodness, speaking behind your back. Right? All of these things are pretty common. The way I would reframe this from a personal as well as from a professional point of view is good riddance. Found out about you, get out of my life. There's still a trauma involved, but you need to work through that trauma. And working through it with a therapist can really help you process it. I have this book here. Let's see if I can get it without knocking down everything behind me. It's called, hold on. How are we doing? We're good?
You're doing good.
Yeah, there we go. All right, didn't knock down my whole bookcase. All right, so this is a really wonderful book and resource that I use to help answer this question. It's backwards on Instagram, but here it is. It's called The 5 Things We Cannot Change and the Happiness We Find by Embracing Them. Okay, this is a wonderful book by David Rico. Okay, who is a therapist, 30 plus years, who's written this brilliant book, all right, on how to accept things that we can't change. These things I find they're so spiritual and things that we can connect with so deeply as Muslims. The 5 things that he talks about, everything changes and ends, okay? Things do not always go according to plan. Life is not always fair. Pain is a part of life. And people are not loving and loyal all the time. Yeah, he hits it right there. And so this is a wonderful resource I highly recommend for people you can get this book online. There's a short version free online, I think, but get this book. I think it can really, really help you work through these challenges in terms of the trauma, because this helps you with mindfulness practices, this book. It looks at practical strategies on how to work through that trauma so that you're no longer traumatized and impacted and triggered. So I highly recommend this book to help with that. So inshallah, that helped to answer it. Okay. All right. Shall we get back to our questions, ladies?
Yeah. Do you want to go back to number 3? How can you make someone feeling helpless be motivated to seek mental health?
Well, I'll put it this way. When you have a broken arm or you have a really bad cold that's not going away, are you going to just sit there and live with that pain? How is that broken arm going to heal properly if you don't get the proper cast put into place, restructuring the bone to be put in that proper alignment, the medication involved to numb the pain a little bit so that you can think clearly, for example, right? Or if you have such an overpowering illness, are you not going to go seek the proper medication and the treatment so that you can get back to your daily functioning, so you can get back to your daily energy, so go back to interacting with the community, back to work, back to school, etc., etc. I would use the ideas around physical illness when we talk about mental illnesses. It's really important to understand that, because I'm sure if you have a broken arm or leg, you're not going to just sit there and allow that pain.
No, you're gonna go get some help.
You're going to go to the emergency to get get an X-ray scan and get the cast. The same concept when it comes to mental health. Reach out to the appropriate supports so you don't get to the point where you're feeling suicidal, like the person that mentioned that earlier, right? It's really important to seek that help. Now, resources here in North America, both in Canada as well as in the United States, you can, and I'll write it out here so everybody can see it as well. It's the Nasiha Youth, the Nasiha, let me just type it out so you can see it. Nasiha Helpline. Okay, and I'll get their number in a second. Is it on the screen? Can you see it?
No.
Oh, it didn't show up. Hold on.
It looks like it.
There it is.
Oh, now it is. Yeah, Nahisa help.
So I'm just gonna, ladies, if you can, I'm just gonna quickly go get the number while we answer this. I want that number on the screen so that people who are feeling this can access this. So they are based in in Toronto, Ontario, and it is accessible for people in North America. Alhamdulillah.
Is it the Nasiha or no?
Nasiha.
Oh, because you wrote Nahisa. Yeah.
Something else? Okay.
Yeah, you wrote Nahisa. That's why. Yeah.
Forgive me for that. Let me just.
That's really important though for anybody who wants. That's a really good helpline. I'm glad that it's there.
Paste it right there. So let's put it back on here. Let me fix that. I'll delete that. Oh my goodness, I just deleted one of our questions.
It's okay. I have them all with me. Don't worry.
That's all good. Here, this is what happens when you multitask, right? So here you are. I've put the right there. So for those of you who are struggling in North America, you have free access to this phone number. So please use that. You have trained people who are there to listen to you, and also from a Muslim perspective. Now, they're not there to give you Islamic advice, but they understand the culture and the religion so that they can do that. So on Instagram, Citrus, do you mind writing that?
Yeah, I'll write it right now.
Okay. Thank you very much. So again, to answer that question, look at it from a physical perspective, and then inshallah, you'll be able to apply that same mentality to a mental health perspective. All right. So let me just quickly see. There's a question on Instagram. Oh, mashallah, there's so many questions that I missed here. Bless
Okay,
you all for sending these questions.
We just sent it in the number.
All right, so let me see here. So somebody mentioned, let me see here. So let's see this question here. So how do you explain to parents mental health anxiety disorders?
They're always dismissive when trying to explain.
They're always dismissive. So they're saying they're always dismissive when trying to explain the situation. I think this is very similar to one of our own questions here, right?
Yeah.
It's how do you convince my Arab parents
that mental health is real?
Okay, that's the question I deleted. So
yeah, that was the fourth one. How do you convince my Arab parents that mental health is real?
Okay, so I'm going to bring that question back on the screen here very quickly. So how do you convince my Arab parents basically when mental health is real? So there's a difference when we talk about ethnic culture and then religion, right? If we're talking about Arab parents, I would say that's very similar to a lot of ethnic cultures in terms of how they view mental health and how they deal with that, right? So it's really important to, again, use the language that our parents perhaps will accept. If your parents are of a religious background, more spiritual, then use some of the things we already spoke about, right? Talk about how Imam Musa al-Kadhim talked about dividing up your time, taking care of yourself, taking care of your nafs, right? One of my favorite ayahs from the Quran is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim from Surah Al-Ra'd, thunder. The thunder, it's called, the ayah goes, ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. And we know we've heard this again and again, right? And I use this in this context in terms of mental health, is verily with the remembrance of Allah do hearts find that serenity, that peace, that tranquility. That serenity and peace from a mental health perspective for me means therapy, for me means taking care of yourself. And there's so many different ways of doing that. So we need to be able to use the language, again, that our parents are going to understand. When we talk, again, about the language to, let's say, non-religious parents, well, we need to talk about stress, right? Talk about feeling stressed and overwhelmed. Talk about, well, that's a lot of pressure. Talk about feeling sick, right? When you're anxious, you got this butterfly feeling in your stomach, you feel shaky, you feel nauseous. So you want to be able to describe the symptoms to your parents, perhaps from a physical perspective, because mental illnesses can show themselves in physical perspectives. In physical symptoms. So it's really important to differentiate that sometimes your physical symptoms could be a medical issue if not taken care of as well. So you cannot
like
just
panic attacks, for instance, or like anxiety attacks.
A lot of people think that panic attacks are heart attacks.
Yes.
Right? And so it's really important to differentiate between that. It's a panic attack is not a heart attack, but it can mimic some of that. And so it's really important to understand these symptoms. Go get it checked out. Who knows? You could have a physical illness. So you can't just dismiss these symptoms that you experience. You mentioned, Tiba, losing weight, gaining weight. That could be from a physical illness as well, not just from a mental illness. So it's really important to understand what the illnesses, so the symptoms are. Focus on the symptoms rather than what you think it is, right? Yeah. So I'm just going to move that. I think somebody had a really good comment here. What tips, mashallah, the questions. We're not getting to our questions because there's so much here.
Alhamdulillah, that's good.
Alhamdulillah. What tips would you suggest to help manage stress within our community, as it's always assumed salah alone or meditation is enough to cope with emotional or mental illnesses? I would agree that thank you. You said it, balance. Yeah. Of course, we know, for example, with salah, okay, with continuous du'as, what does this do to the spirit? It's very calming. And there are studies upon studies. And if you go to my YouTube channel and just put in my name and put Islamic counseling concepts and theories and practice, I have a whole workshop that I talk about specifically this Islamic therapeutic treatment for illnesses. And it's a whole discussion, so I'm not going to get into it now. But the research shows that people who adhere to a faith practice rituals that have meaning to them, such as salah, such as supplications and dua. It's about that connection to God subhanahu wa ta'ala that lifts your spirit. However, a person who is severely depressed or dealing with depression, suicidal thoughts, is not going to be connecting with this concept right away. What we want to do, right, is balance it with proper treatment and sometimes, yes, medication. And no, you will not get addicted if it's taken properly and monitored properly by a professional, because that's one of the fears we have, the stigmas in our community.
Yeah, that you get addicted. Yeah.
But then I ask you, don't you take insulin for your diabetes? Hi, Shanahi. Aren't you addicted to that for life? You're using that for life, right?
Yeah.
Some people will have to take medication for life, same as diabetics.
Because they don't see it physically on you, so they just assume it's not there. So what is medication going to do? Exactly. That's what they say.
But when we use this a concept that we're comparing it to diabetics who take insulin to manage their sugar levels, right? Their glucose levels, the same concept here. When you're taking medication, it's to help balance the hormones and the serotonin levels, dopamine levels in your brain chemistry. Because sometimes people are born with this deficiency, or trauma triggers it, or crisis triggers it. Because this leads to another question I think somebody sent. I thought I saw a question is, oh yeah, so how do you deal with depression when it comes out of nowhere? And I would deal with it this way, is to make sure that you understand that it happens, that it could be something that is genetic. It could be something that is triggered because of a past trauma. It could be an overwhelming flow of stress hormones in your body, right? And sometimes you need a bit of that medication to help balance it or reduce the intensity of those symptoms to take care of it. Because I get this question all the time from clients that come in, is that I've been fine, I've had no issues, alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. Or then all of a sudden I get a panic attack. All of a sudden I'm just not interested in anything anymore. And they don't know where it's coming from. And so genetics has a role in it, right? Sometimes it's you're stressed and you don't realize it. Sometimes it's past trauma that's triggered. So it's really important to be aware of these things. Otherwise, yeah, that's a lot of stress to be putting on your body. And there are ways of coping and dealing with it in a healthy way. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really true, though, to be honest, Umar.
That's a great
so
question,
sensitive.
mashallah.
Yeah.
So a lot of questions from Instagram. Well, thank you for somebody by the name of Shia Grads. They said, mashallah, sisters, great work. Definitely needs to be talked about. More people need to be open, and most importantly, ask for help. And I think this is part of our goals for this session, is for those folks who are struggling, is to be able to reach out. And thank you, sister, for I respect you for respecting our work, especially because in our communities we're like, just ignore it.
Yeah, it's really sad that they don't really open up about it, and when it's really like, it's like a main trigger for a lot of people.
That, like, if you go to therapy, you're broken.
Yes.
Something's wrong with you.
You are broken. You are broken, just like you have a broken arm, right?
You can be broken
spirit.
Yeah.
Your spirit, your soul is broken at the moment. What do we do to heal it? Mm-hmm. What do we do to heal it? And it's really important that we destigmatize it, normalize it, like we said earlier with men's mental health, talking about rujula, right? Talking about manliness and manhood. Mm-hmm. The way that we described it through the Shia perspective of Muharram and Ashura and tears, and the examples that we have of the Ahlul Bayt who showed emotion. Did the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, did he not show emotion when his son died? He was heartbroken. He showed that. You know, like, you have these strong male figures who showed that. The father of Prophet Joseph, the classic example, who cried until he lost his eyesight. He was the prophet of God. Is that not an example as well? So we need to normalize by using examples we already have in our faith, right? And even in, let's say, somebody who's not religious, but using that concept of being emotionally intelligent. Right? Somebody mentioned here that the Prophet cried.
Yeah, as someone said, Sayyidah Khadija.
Yeah. Absolutely. He cried for his beloved, who was his life partner, who sacrificed, who gave of her wealth, who gave
even Imam Ali for Sayyidah Fatima. So
especially Sayyidah Fatima. Salam
Everyone.
Allah.
Yeah.
It's just your heart lurches when you think of Sayyidah Fatima.
Yeah.
You know, and then when you think of Imam Ali and how much emotion he cried for his beloved flower from the heavens, right? So, sorry, I'm getting quite emotional, especially the days leading up to Muharram, and just reading and learning and getting lectures ready and remembering Sayyidah Fatima these days and what she's going to see coming up. Yeah, it's
breaking.
It catches you. And I think this year a lot of us are really going to be impacted.
Especially since we can't like physically go to the shrine, and
that's exactly why. Like we're not going to be able to go, and I think it's important to normalize that we are allowed to show this emotion, whether we're men or women, and it's important to show this emotion for our children, right? And it's the love of the Ahlul Bayt that gets to your heart, right? What they sacrificed and what they did, just so that today as women, we can wear the hijab from the example of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, right? When you pick up that cup of water and you remember Al-Abbas, you know, you give that to the young, you give that to the children. In my family's tradition, especially as Karbalais, my parents taught us that you always feed and you give water to the youngest who asks for it. You know, beautiful examples like that. But I think it's really important to normalize that majalis are not the only place to cry. They are not just the only place for men to cry. You're allowed to show emotion. Now, too much emotion, that can be hard to manage and deal with. And sometimes people are not comfortable, right? They don't know how to deal with the male who's crying perhaps in front of them. So it's like, toughen up, bro, you know, like be a man. being a man means to show emotion,
It does.
a healthy form of emotion, right? So I think it's vital. It's really, really important to know that and normalize that and be aware of that, right?
Mhm.
Anyhow, let's have a salawat and go on to our next question. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum.
الله يرفع البلاء.
Another question here. Lady, do you want to read that question? I think it was I lost count here. Number
How can a Muslim seek help if they cannot find a Muslim therapist, psychologist, etc., for them to understand their needs?
That's an excellent question. How can a Muslim seek help if they cannot find a Muslim therapist, psychologist for them to understand their needs? This I would answer this way. Find somebody who is culturally aware. Find somebody who understands religion, even if they are not Muslim themselves. Believe it or not, the therapist that I personally see is not Muslim, and he's a male. But when I was looking for somebody, I was trying to find somebody like me in terms of the style of therapy that I do, not necessarily as a Muslim. The style of therapy, first of all, and second, who understands religion and understands culture. When you have somebody, and we are trained, by the way, as therapists, we are trained in cultural diversity, especially the new breed of counselors and therapists that you could say. We're trained in cultural diversity because, subhanAllah, the world that we live in now is very diverse, where we're not living in silos anymore and completely unaware of other people. So we are trained in that, and it is important to have the proper training so you know how to support others. Mind you, there are still going to be some people who are not going to understand. You have people even of the same faith, by the way, who are just not going to get it. And sometimes it's the style of therapy or the connection you have with the therapist. So I would say if you cannot find somebody with the religious or Islamic background, find somebody who has proper cultural counseling, who can do that, who can do therapy with faith-based counseling as well. So that's really, really important. That will really help with the therapeutic process when you have somebody to understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there, so inshallah for
I can't hear you very well. I think you moved your earphones, perhaps.
Can you hear me now?
You can also go online now.
There you go. That's better. Well, exactly. Nowadays, mashallah, there's so many different services. That's like we've gone virtual in our clinic where all of our therapies either video or calling. So you can definitely find somebody to help you with that.
Yeah,
Somebody mentioned a really beautiful comment here, and it's not healthy to keep emotions built up. Absolutely. There are ways of managing and regulating your emotions. Absolutely. But to keep them bolted up and bottling up this kind of trauma, it can lead to trauma. And we see this in clinical research, and I see this with clinically in practice. The people who bottle up these emotions, it comes out in different ways. It can come out in the forms of a lot of stress symptoms, breakdowns, not knowing how to manage their emotions, anger, rage. It can come out in so many unhealthy ways. You take it out on the wrong people. Perhaps you're not doing well in school. So it comes out in different ways. That's why when we normalize mental health and emotion, then we can regulate and manage it in a very healthy way, inshallah. Right? So punching a pillow, sure. Don't go punching your sister or brother. Punch a pillow. Do that, right? Go for
a lot of people learn about it the hard way too.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people learn it the hard way. So they just leave everything and then suddenly just blows up and they're just like, what am I doing? What's going on? Yeah.
I think it's also important to be able to name your emotions as you're feeling them. I feel like a lot of people
absolutely.
Yeah.
Labeling them, right, is important because sometimes you have anger, which is the umbrella, but underneath anger, you have irritation. You have, what else? Can you girls help me out with that? So irritation, frustration,
helplessness, I guess.
Helplessness, right, because you're not in control, right? So there's a lot of sub emotions related to anger that we right away say, I'm peed off, excuse my language, right? I'm really angry. I'm but then if you go down,
patience, not having enough
patience. There you go. So it's really important to know how to label your emotions appropriately It's really important also to learn how to lower the intensity of your emotions. So let's say you are angry and upset. It's healthy to show that. It's important to show that, because anger shows you. By the way, speaking of anger, there's a really great program that my dear friend Anisa Diab did with Hajj Hassan and Rajab Ali. If you go to Enlight Media, they did a whole session on anger and how to deal with it. And she gave some great suggestions. So I highly recommend for you to check that out on Enlight Media on YouTube. And they have a whole session on how to deal with anger. And she gives some beautiful insights. So I'm just going to briefly do that. Here is that you want to learn again what your symptoms are, so you learn how to cool yourself down. Go for a walk, punch a pillow, write up a letter, rip it up, call a friend, but don't take it out on somebody, right? And being able to communicate and talk to the person afterwards, expressing your emotions, but not using you statements. Use I statements. So for example, I felt very frustrated when I didn't get a chance to finish my sentence, rather than an arabuk labul khallathak.
Exactly.
I didn't get to finish. You interrupted me. That's why I'm angry. Excuse my language. But we get very frustrated and upset like that. So it's really important to say, for example, I became very frustrated and upset. I became angry and upset when I didn't get to finish what I wanted to say, rather than you interrupted me. See how?
Yeah. Talking about how it made you feel shows them that, oh wait, I did something. Let's talk it out.
Never and always.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see if I have a book here. Just trying to see my shelf here. No, I don't see the anger one. No, I don't have the anger one here, but I do have a resource. If anybody wants, you can pop me a message later and I'll send you a link that we have at our university site on just how to manage anger. Yeah. Any other questions, sisters?
We have how can you deal with depression and anxiety that come out of nowhere?
Yeah, I think we answered that one earlier. Yeah, when we looked at genetics, when we looked at built up stress, when we looked at trauma or crisis, absolutely. Yeah. For example, what happened in Beirut a week and a half ago, I know that traumatized a lot of people, and a lot of people have not been able to eat well, sleep well. They've been in a lot of grief. Even if they have not been directly impacted, they were impacted by seeing that tragedy in front of them. It was
from experience, it's like I felt guilty for some reason. Like my family in Lebanon is suffering through all this, so I was feeling guilty over here, and it just took me like a couple days to come out of that. Like, what just happened? It's like it was actually very impacting to a lot of people that are not even in Lebanon, but like us over here.
Home.
Yeah, it's our home. And
of course, it's very hard to see something like that, and you're far away. As an Iraqi, I can absolutely sympathize and feel that pain, because in Iraq we've had many types of explosions that have taken the lives of many people, including family. And you're here and you're living in this ni'am and these blessings, and you see what's happening to your family. And so when you see and feel that, it's really important to reframe that energy. Rather than feeling helpless and hopeless, take that energy and work on it in terms of what can I do to help? Perhaps put that energy into raising funds, in terms of bringing awareness, right? Rather than just staying home and feeling very depressed. One of my good friends who just popped up here, she wasn't feeling great. And I'm like, all right, let's go to the park. Let's go sit in nature.
Yeah, it's really good.
On the side, I'm on my phone, raising money on the side, while I'm with her. Hold on a second. We just got another 100. I got to put that in. Alhamdulillah. But we went, connecting with nature is incredible. Subhanallah. Grounding yourself, your feet in the sand, the water, the grass. I love praying on the grass outside. My friend thought I was probably crazy when I did that. Or people
after this, we're gonna go walk out. We're gonna go.
Our tornado has passed, alhamdulillah, or the warning. I see that
you're safe.
Now. Alhamdulillah, shukr. I don't think I can pray outside. It's wet. But there's something about nature when you connect with it. And research and science has shown that. And one of the doctors here at our university actually has a whole research that he has on happiness. And he connected it with nature. And he said that people who spend time in nature, connect in nature, they will show more positive emotions. Mm-hmm. So it's really vital. Of course, الراحة النفسية. So you detoxify yourself when you connect with the beautiful spirituality of nature. Absolutely. Now, here's a question. Yeah. It says, Salam, I was wondering how Muslims can understand despair as a sin when grappling with mental health issues and conversations. When some people hit a really low point, they can't see past their trauma. Can somebody please screenshot that question? I want that. That's an excellent question. And how Muslims can understand despair as a sin. I've heard this before from speakers who say that despair is a sin. And my understanding of that is when they say that despair is a sin, this is when you've lost all faith and hope in Allah. I think a lot of Muslims who struggle with mental health, they don't necessarily lose faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they've lost a lot of hope.
Yeah.
They've lost hope perhaps with the tragedies around them, trauma, because it's an illness perhaps that they have, or people that have disappointed them and hurt them, right? Mm-hmm. So that it pushes them to that low point.
They start questioning, like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? That questioning gets to them.
I think there's a lot of spiritual philosophy behind that there are a lot of beautiful lectures out there on that. If you look at Brother, bless his name, I forget his name, Brother Khalil Jafar from Toronto, look up his lectures on the self, on the nafs. He does a beautiful series on that, which really works with this topic here. And because you can't answer that in a black and white answer, like it's not a right or wrong or black and white. There's so much around this question. And for me as a psychotherapist, especially as a practicing Muslim and using this type of, using Islamic concepts in therapy, the way I look at that is when somebody who has gone to the point of despair, it's because they've lost hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They lost faith in Allah, right? Yeah. And again, I don't believe we have the right to use labels such as sin on somebody who is dealing with a mental illness.
That's very true.
We need to change the conversation around that, right? We say that this person is ill. We want to bring them from that place of darkness
and help them to the light.
To the light.
Yeah, it can be judgmental to be like, you're sinning, you're doing this wrong.
It's like you have to understand their perspective.
Yeah, like somebody comes up to you and says, I've had suicidal thoughts. I've had thoughts of harming myself, of killing myself. If you start using the language of the haram police or that's haram, you're going to hell. I'm sorry. You think that person is going to come to you for help? Have you done a service to this person? Do you think this person doesn't know this already? They're not there.
Like someone that says, "Oh, stop feeling that way." Like, okay, how
so much.
Okay, you just helped me. How did I stop? Like, how did you help me?
Again, I put it back out there. If you've broken a leg and you're in pain, can somebody actually tell you?
No, that's the thing.
Someone else broke their leg, so
like get over it, or get past that, or
those phrases trigger them.
It's very insensitive and very, I would say, a lack of awareness and knowledge and emotional intelligence. When people use that type of language, get over it. That was in the past. Why does this still impact you? I would say this person hasn't worked through the processing of it. Of course they haven't gotten over it. Somebody who's violated you or hurt you, or of course they're not going to get over it like that. It could take years sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But the healing process, like Liba, you're studying psychology, you're just learning about the theories of psychology. And then inshallah, if you get into clinical practice, you'll see the skill set that they teach you on how to help somebody. It's a process. It's not an overnight thing, right?
Mm-hmm. I think there's 7 stages. Yeah.
There's 7 stages
to go through the process of anger, acceptance.
I don't remember theory. I just do practice now. If I want to do theory, I have to go back and research, and I do that a lot for some of my programs, because you've studied it basic 101, right? And it's in and out.
And then everything after that is like a buildup of.
It's a buildup. You know the basic concept, but then sometimes you go back and remember like the ABCs of it. So that's great that you're learning that, and sometimes we need to be reminded of that. But when you understand that, then you can understand this commentary. This also creates a feeling of guilt.
Yes.
Right? And that guilt, shame, Absolutely. That's part of the stigma. We need to work through that. And I think through the therapeutic process with somebody who understands faith, somebody who understands culture and diversity and how important spirituality is in a person's life, I think it can really help a lot.
Yeah.
Khair, inshallah. Any other comments or questions?
Honestly, this was really beneficial, and I hope everyone that's watching, actually, if you're feeling anything, just seek it, because it's okay to do it, and it's okay that you're feeling this way. Your feelings should not be it should be validated. Like, your feelings matter, so if you need to talk to someone, you can reach out to Sister Barak, or reach out to us, inshallah. We know a lot of people in Dearborn.
Yeah. There's that Dearborn accent that I love. Bless you. Absolutely. Yeah. Reach out to the sisters if you're in the area. They are connected to the mental health professionals that they know in the area. I don't know who they are. So that's wonderful that you ladies know that. So if anybody asks me, then I can refer them back to you to connect them to those professionals. We also put the Nasiha helpline that you can also access. And again, I cannot do the therapy, but if you have questions, contact me, and inshallah I will do my best. If I don't get back to you, it's because probably your message is in the junk, and I check that once in a while. And inshallah we'll do our best to connect you. Now, one of my favorite therapists in the States is Sister Anisa Diab. She's a good friend and a wonderful therapist, and I've heard great things from people who've connected with her. So you can look her up on Instagram as well as on Facebook and even her website. And she is a wonderful Muslim-based counselor that can do therapy with clients of a Muslim background. She's also from our Shia community as well, so she understands and gets this.
Yeah, and for the males, there's also, like, as Sister Barak already mentioned, Hassanan Rajab Ali, brother Hassanan Rajab Ali is really, really good as well.
He's not a therapist, and neither
he's not a therapist, but he can connect. He has,
and they themselves have been amazing in helping people, especially through spiritual crisis. And they also are connected with a network of therapists.
Yeah, they have a good connection.
And the professionals. So absolutely reach out. And even if you're a male, you can still talk to a female therapist. Absolutely. I've had male clients who prefer talking to a female therapist. So it all depends on preference. And I also have some male therapist friends that I could connect you with as well. Inshallah. Ma'jureen, Sabaya, for putting this together.
It was so, we're so happy to have you here, and inshallah in the future, once the borders, are gone, we can bring you here to Dearborn. We're gonna bring you here.
Inshallah, my pleasure. I miss flying out everywhere.
Yeah, and especially with Muharram coming up, please leave us in your du'as, like during these heartbreaking nights.
Inshallah. May Allah accept all of your efforts, inshallah, and your a'mal. And I just want to put it out there as well that I'm working on a series called The Psychology of Muharram. So inshallah, I'm going to have daily uploads of different topics around psychological concepts that are related to the nightly themes of Muharram. So that's something, inshallah, that I'm really excited to put together and put out there. So on my Facebook as well as on my YouTube channel, inshallah, if everything goes smoothly. Otherwise, it'll just be delayed, but inshallah, so you can follow that. There's also amazing programs out there. Hajj Hassanan has a program coming up as well, daily, nightly majalis style. You've got the majalis in Dearborn as well, the drive-throughs.
There's even like a Muharram tent. They have a tent up where people just sit, but it's like first come, first serve, basically.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Everything.
Inshallah, may Allah protect all the muhabbin al-Ahl al-Bayt wa khaddam Ahl al-Bayt wal-Hussein, inshallah. And may you all be protected, inshallah. And for those folks who want to see this, it will be on Instagram and it's already on YouTube and Facebook, inshallah. We look forward to working with you ladies again.
Inshallah.
And for everybody. My pleasure. I just see a question that somebody just quickly, I hate missing out on questions. Somebody mentioned, how do you deal with getting angry so quick over small things? Sister, can you inbox me and I'll send you the resource. And sisters, if you like, contact me as well, and I'll send you the link and you can share that in terms of anger with everybody, inshallah. Thank you very much, my dear sisters. Bless you. Inshallah, we can do this in person. And please remember us in your du'as these days, the upcoming days, inshallah. Thank you very much. So I'm going to sign on Instagram as well as off of Facebook and YouTube. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Okay.